The air is thick with smoke, buildings lie in rubble, families huddle together, their faces etched with fear and exhaustion. This is the heartbreaking reality of war in the heart of Europe, a conflict that has ripped through cities and torn apart lives. The images are stark and unforgettable. Children clutching worn teddy bears, elderly couples saying goodbye to their homes, hospitals overflowing with the wounded. The lucky ones escape, becoming refugees in a world struggling to cope with the crisis. They carry with them the trauma of war, the pain of loss, and the uncertain hope for a future free from violence. The war in Europe is a tragedy not just for the region but for the world. Amidst the ruins and despair, there are glimmers of hope. The roots of the conflict are complex and run deep. Long-standing tensions, fueled by historical grievances, nationalistic sentiments and geopolitical rivalries, created a tinderbox in the heart of Europe. The spark came unexpectedly, igniting a conflict that spread with terrifying speed. Initial diplomatic efforts failed to contain the situation, and the world watched in disbelief as the drums of war grew louder. Accusations flew back and forth, each side blaming the other for the escalating crisis. Hopes for a peaceful resolution dwindled with each passing day. The spectre of nuclear confrontation, once unthinkable, loomed large, casting a dark shadow over the future. The human cost of this war is immeasurable. Millions have been displaced from their homes, forced to flee for their lives. Families have been torn apart, their dreams shattered by the bombs and bullets. Children have witnessed horrors no child should ever see. Beyond the immediate casualties of war, the conflict has had a devastating impact on the region's economy. Infrastructure lies in ruins, businesses have been destroyed, and supply chains have been disrupted. The war has exacerbated existing inequalities and pushed millions into poverty. The World Bank warns of a lost generation as education and healthcare systems crumble under the strain of conflict. The poorest and most vulnerable are bearing the brunt of the crisis. The war has been marked by a series of key events that have shaped its trajectory and intensified its global impact. From the initial invasion that sent shockwaves around the world, to the subsequent battles that have raged across the region, each moment has brought with it new horrors and heightened anxieties. The siege of insert city name became a symbol of the brutality of the conflict, with civilians trapped in a desperate struggle for survival. The use of insert specific weapon or tactic drew international condemnation, raising fears of further escalation. Each of these events has had a profound impact on the course of the war, shaping public opinion and influencing international diplomacy. Section 5, A World on Edge. Global implications of the war. The conflict in Europe is not a distant war. Its effects are felt globally, reshaping geopolitical alliances, fueling an energy crisis, and exacerbating existing social and economic inequalities. The war has tested the post-World War II order, exposing the fragility of international institutions and the limitations of diplomacy in the face of naked aggression. Sanctions and disruptions to supply chains have led to soaring energy prices, fueling inflation and creating an energy crisis in many parts of the world. The war has exposed the world's dependence on fossil fuels and highlighted the urgent need to transition to cleaner and more sustainable energy sources. The massive exodus of refugees has strained resources and tested the capacity of humanitarian organizations. The war is a stark reminder of the human cost of conflict and the shared responsibility to protect those fleeing violence and persecution. Section 6. Echoes of the Past. Historical Roots of the Conflict. To understand the present conflict, one must delve into the long and turbulent history of the region. The collapse of the Soviet Union, the expansion of NATO, and the unresolved conflicts in the Balkans have all contributed to the current crisis. The scars of historical injustices, ethnic tensions, and territorial disputes run deep in the region. The failure to address these historical grievances has created fertile ground for mistrust, resentment, and ultimately renewed conflict. Section 7. The Uncertain Future. Paths to Peace and Peril. The future of the conflict remains uncertain. The path ahead is fraught with danger, and the potential for further escalation is a constant threat. Yet, even amidst the darkness, there are glimmers of hope. Diplomatic efforts, though faltering, continue, and there are calls for a ceasefire and a negotiated settlement. One possible scenario is a protracted conflict with neither side able to achieve a decisive victory. Another possibility is a negotiated settlement, but this would require significant concessions from both sides and a willingness to compromise. The international community has a critical role to play in shaping the outcome of the conflict. Section 8, a fragile hope. Choosing unity in a time of division. The war in Europe is a tragedy for all involved. It is a stark reminder of the human cost of conflict and the urgent need for peace. While the future remains uncertain, there is always hope. Hope for a future where dialogue replaces violence, where diplomacy triumphs over aggression, and where peace prevails over conflict. The international community must stand united in its condemnation of aggression, its support for Ukraine, and its pursuit of a just and lasting peace. The world must choose unity over division, cooperation over conflict, and hope over despair.